When I'm creating super cheap meals, I like to focus on recipes that can be made with just a couple ingredients and preferably items that can be found on sale. I recently went to H Mart and they had a great deal on green cabbage at 69 cents a pound. And as soon as I saw the cabbage, I thought of a recipe that's been on my bucket list for a while now. I was able to get this cabbage for about $1.40 and I can make quite a few meals with this. So I'm really looking forward to finally making this recipe. And by the way, for anyone that lives near an H Mart, they had an amazing deal on brown rice, 15 pounds for $6.99. I've made a lot of different recipes with cabbage, but I've never tried the roasted cabbage wedges before. And even though I don't show it a lot on my channel, roasting is one of my favorite ways to cook vegetables. The results always seem to be much more flavorful than just regular pan frying. And one of my viewers had told me about how she likes to make these cabbage wedges and then serve them over some noodles. So I thought that would make a great 2-ingredient meal. And of course, I am trying to keep this as cheap as possible, but if you want to add something to this, you can always add some sausage into the mix or even some ground hamburger or really whatever you want. And I just can't resist having a few bites of this raw. Since I've never tried this before, I'm not sure how thick I want my wedges to be, so I think I'll do a few of the different wedges. I'll do some a little bit thinner and then some a little thicker, so that by the time I'm done eating this, I'll have a great idea of how I prefer to have this made. And the next time, I'll just make it the way that I like best. So my viewer said that she puts a little oil down, and I think that that is just to help the cabbage to cook, to crisp up a little bit, but I think I'm going to go ahead and add some oil in a separate container along with some garlic salt. And I did decide to add a few cherry tomatoes onto this roasting pan just in case I needed them at the end, but as it turns out, I didn't need them at all. I found this skillet butter and herb seasoning in the pantry, and this just has some butter seasoning, some turmeric, and a few other ingredients. And then I thought I would maybe try some different seasonings on 2 of the wedges, and then I can determine what I like best. And of course, you can always use butter here instead of oil. I never purchase butter, so sometimes it's fun to try these butter flavored seasoning mixes. And I thought lemon pepper might be good, but then I realized I was out of this. But I decided to use this container for some of the nutritional yeast that I have. And then I thought it would be fun to try one of the wedges with this Southwest Chipotle seasoning. And this is the dash salt-free version. There are so many different angles that you could go with these wedges. I'm going to bake these at 425 for about 15 minutes. And then I'll flip them over and cook them for about 10 minutes on the other side. I'm going to serve the cabbage wedges over these egg noodles. They're inexpensive and they're going to boost the protein in the meal. I know that a lot of people like to add a little nutritional yeast to the wedges, so I thought I would try this on one of the wedges. And I'm going to fill up this container that just got emptied with lemon pepper to make this easier to apply. I wanted to use an inexpensive pasta, but obviously if you want to, you can use a red lentil pasta to add in some additional protein. If you're eating low carb, you can also use these miracle noodles. And I did forget to tell you guys that I spotted these at Aldi's the other day. So if you're diabetic or eating low carb, if I were you, I would definitely stock up on these noodles because they are low carb and they're delicious if you know how to use them. They're really just like every other noodle. You just need to put a nice sauce with it. And I especially like to bulk these up with lots of vegetables because they're not very heavy on their own. They're very light tasting, unlike regular pasta. I've been enjoying using these egg noodles. I get these at Dollar Tree and I can get quite a few meals out of one bag. I also like the Walmart brand. I do have a lot of people that watch my channel that are really struggling with money and being able to afford food, and I do recommend this because there are 8 servings. They each have 8 grams of protein, so that's 64 grams of protein for $1.48 and 1,680 calories. So that is a really good bargain, and you can do a lot with these noodles. Here is the cabbage after 15 minutes. So now I just need to flip them over and cook for another 10 minutes. And I really think that this is going to be a matter of personal choice. Tongs are definitely going to work better. But it's going to be a matter of personal choice in terms of how soft you like your cabbage. Again, I made these in different sizes just so I can get a feel for what I'm going to like best. These noodles do cook very quickly, even faster than the package says. So I pulled these out and I also reserved some of the liquid just in case I need it for something. And the crispy bits on the cabbage are so delicious. It makes me think I want to make sure to brown up some more of that. Anyway, my viewer said that she likes to spread out her noodles in the pan just to soak up all of that oil and salty goodness. So that's what I'm doing. And then I went ahead and plated each one just to give a try for the different seasonings that I had. And the first one I tried was the garlic salt. And this is just delicious, just like this. The flavor of the roasted cabbage is so intense. Sometimes I forget about how much better vegetables are when you simply roast them. It just really intensifies the flavor. Okay, now I'm going to try the one that I added the nutritional yeast to. And this was just as delicious. It just had a little more savory flavor. So I love both of those. And then I tried the one with the buttery seasoning, and that was delicious as well. I actually really like that. And then lastly, I tried the Southwest Chipotle seasoning, and that was really good as well. There's so many different applications that you could do with that. If you're in the mood for maybe like a Southwest style, you could add some chicken to it, maybe some black beans. But I don't know if I was necessarily in the mood for Chipotle. I think I have to be in the mood for Chipotle to really enjoy that. These were all really delicious, and I would eat any of these again. But I think the one that was my favorite was the one with the buttery seasoning. And if you didn't have that, then obviously you could add in just a little bit of butter with the garlic salt. And then I tried this with a little of the chili crisp drizzled over the top, and it elevated this from what was probably an 8 to a 10. This really made this fantastic. In fact, it was so crave-worthy that this was my lunch on Christmas Day. I decided I really wanted to make this again. I was planning to do some more things with this cabbage, but I love this so much that I decided to try a different way by cutting it into the slices that they're all the same size, and then try this in my air fryer, basically just spraying it with a little olive oil, so using less oil. And then I use a little bit of this butter and herb seasoning, which has some garlic in it. And somebody had brought that on my family getaway, and it ended back at my place. So it's been fun trying this new seasoning. This was my preferred way to make this. I felt like I was able to get the cabbage the perfect consistency. I liked it a little bit crispy, so it had a little bit of body, but then it was a little bit soft on the outside. I really felt like this was the best because then it had a little bit of crunch to it. You'll have to try this, but for me, this just was the best. I love this, and I also loved that the outside edges got a little bit crispy. So yeah, it was a perfect meal. I hope you guys will try this and maybe you'll play around with it and add some proteins to it. But if not, if you're just looking for a super cheap meal when cabbage is on sale, this is the way to go. Since this video is all about meals that you can make with just a few ingredients, I thought I would show you a few of my favorite meals. This one is just mashed potatoes with a delicious brown gravy poured over toast, but you can easily add in some ground beef, and that gravy is going to make everything taste delicious. I'll put a link to this video in the description area of this video. And then you can always switch this up and use rice instead of mashed potatoes, or you can swap out the egg noodles in there as well. Making a good gravy is the easiest and most inexpensive way to pull a dinner together. And I've made lots of gravy on my channel over the years. It's so easy to do. All you need is a little flour, some oil, and then the seasoning of your choice, which for me is usually a bouillon. But sometimes I've just used onions or something like that for the seasoning as well. But it's just so easy to do, and so many meals that you can make with this as the basis for your meal. I was looking over my videos from this year just to see some of the recipes that I made with that had just a couple ingredients, and I found these potato patties that were made using cabbage, and these were really delicious and very filling also. And for this recipe, I started with some potatoes that were cooked in some salted water, and then I just mashed these up, and I also sauteed some cabbage with some garlic. I can't remember if I used regular garlic or garlic salt. And for this recipe, I did use a little bit of butter, but obviously you can make it without it if you'd rather. And then I just sauteed the cabbage, and then I added that cabbage to the potatoes, and then I fried up the patties. I've always liked potato patties, and this was a fun little spin on it. You can always make these and try subbing in different ingredients. Do you guys remember when I made these doubles? These are a Caribbean street food, specifically from the area of Trinidad. This is basically a recipe that just has two main ingredients, the flatbread and then the chickpeas, and then you add in the toppings of your choice. This was surprisingly delicious. And the reason for the yellow color in the dough was basically just that it had some yellow seasoning added in, like turmeric. The dough on this was a little bit crispy and very chewy. It was just really delicious. When I make recipes, I'm always thinking, how can I use this one recipe and spawn off like 5 different ideas from it? And when I made this, I was automatically thinking how I could use the same technique to make gorditas. But then, of course, you could also add in some masa into the mix, and then you could use like regular beans. Just so many different ways that you could go with this. And I really enjoyed the chickpeas on this dish. I'll link this video for you in the description area. I did a lot with chickpeas this year. Here's a meal I made with baked potato and a filling of chickpeas. And then I think that the cabbage salad that I made was inspired by a cabbage salad that I tried at Whole Foods that was delicious. And this meal overall was really good, and it just had a few main ingredients. I made a delicious carrot soup, and it was so velvety, creamy, and delicious. As per a lot of my creations, I probably discovered this while doing an extreme budget. So I had a can of chickpeas and some of these carrots that I got on sale, and so I decided to try to make a meal out of them. This was such a simple soup, but it was healthy and delicious. And since it's the end of the year, I wanted to share with you my top 3 favorite recipes of 2024. And hands down, one of my favorite recipes was this granola that I made. I made this several ways. I made a super cheap version with just oatmeal, and then I spruced it up a bit, adding in different nuts and things like that. But I have to say, it is so easy to make granola, and it's so much better than anything you can buy in the store. All you do is mix the ingredients together and bake, and you have a delicious snack. And you can use the same recipe to customize this so many different ways. You could add in some peanut butter. You could add in different kinds of nuts, different kinds of fruits. There are lots of ways to make this with the ingredients that you have on hand. One of my other favorite recipes from this year was when I made bagels. I didn't realize how easy it was going to be to make them. And at first I thought my bagels were going to be really ugly, because they certainly were ugly when I was making them. They had these weird shapes and it just felt so awkward trying to make these, especially since I'd never done it before. But these turned out looking so much better than I thought they would. And best of all, this was inspired from a 3-ingredient Weight Watchers recipe. And I think it had self-rising flour, which I don't think I had, so I used regular flour. And then, gosh, was it baking soda or baking powder? I don't remember. Anyway, you'll have to watch the video. But it also had yogurt, Greek yogurt. And this was another one of those recipes where you could use it as a springboard for making lots of different kinds of bagels, which I really liked. It turned out so good and so delicious. I think that this should be in anyone's toolbox that's eating on a budget, because you can make these up and add these to the freezer and then just pull them out as needed. They make delicious egg bagel sandwiches in the morning. "2024 was the year that I learned to make delicious pasta out of almost anything. I tried it with so many different kinds of vegetables, and I frequently used greens in there. But every time I would make it a little bit different, so I really perfected my method. Sometimes I had a lot of vegetables, like here, and sometimes I only had a couple of ingredients, like here. I tried using all kinds of different noodles, including gluten-free and carb-free. I used the same method with all of the dishes, and they were all delicious. I tried some new seasoning bases, like using nutritional yeast as a kind of a savory, creamy flavor that I discovered that I really love in a pasta dish. But I also really love just plain garlic, and it makes for such an easy and simple meal. There were times that I used fancy ingredients, like when I tried this Trader Joe's gluten-free tagliatelle pasta, and they have a lemon pesto sauce that I really enjoy, and I picked up these manzanilla olives to go with it. This was what I call a convenience meal, where you just throw everything together, and it was delicious. But my favorite pasta meals that I make are the ones I make myself, with just a simple sauce made with garlic. Pasta is my weekend comfort food, and so I'm usually throwing in whatever I have on hand. This dish, I even tried adding some peppers in there, and it was good. And then for this one, I had some asparagus that I needed to use up, and I used these little shells. Shells are not my favorite pasta, but this meal was definitely delicious. This year, I learned that I could turn my old produce into an amazing meal. For this instance, I had this cabbage and these tomatoes that were going bad, and so I just sauteed them in some water with a little garlic and a little oil, and they made the most delicious spaghetti dish. I could not stop eating this. In fact, my mouth is just watering while I'm editing this video. I mean, who knew cabbage would be so good with spaghetti? And honestly, you couldn't even tell that it was in there. And I even managed to slip pasta into some of my favorite Asian dishes. This was one that I took for lunch, which just had a few stir-fried vegetables. And then I also made this chow mein. I think I made a chicken chow mein version and also a tofu chow mein version. So that is another great meal for someone looking for just a simple dish with a few ingredients. Anyway, guys, I hope you like this little mini year-in review of all my favorite dishes. That's it, friends. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend and a fabulous new year. I know how valuable your time is, so I just thank you so much for choosing to spend it with me.
Windows are open, wanna feel the wind blow through my hair. Which way do I follow? What happens tomorrow? I turn to you and hope you can guide the way. Sometimes I give up, just wanna be on my own. Even in the darkest times, you give me hope. So